I kani lea e, lea haoli na lani. He o nipa a ka oia I o e, aia hoi ko ka koakua. Aloha no, aloha e, aloha no e. Aloha. And we brought with us today, we have for you, Billy is ulu maika.
Look at that.
It's an implement that we use to train our warriors, and during the time of makahiki, matariki, they roll it in between two sticks to train their arms and their eyes, their vision. These were used in the day to fight against the others and get them at their ankles, you know. Roll it.
Right.
I was really blessed. When I came here, we went to the museum and I said, "Ulu maika." There was 4 of them in the museum, and I went, "Oh my gosh!" And I looked and they said it was from Hawaii. So I said, "I made it the right size."
How'd you get this through customs?
They didn't.
Oh my gosh!
They didn't.
That like takes up all the weight in your bag.
So we want to offer this for education and
That's
to share
perfect.
what
Oh, I
we
love
do
that.
for our makahiki.
So these are the
That's
pegs
awesome.
you would line up,
Line them
about
up
a foot apart,
Yep.
and then you would determine a distance that you would roll through.
That's awesome. Nice.
Train with the warriors. Yes.
New activity for my students.
This is a shawl, and this has our Eva bird. I love my Eva bird. I'm a mamo. But this is the Eva bird, and she lives in Waimanalo, and they're just beautiful, majestic birds that actually when they're flying and circling around, they're telling you that the rain is coming. So get ready. Be prepared.
Thank you.
Kita uru whakataka te ho kita tonga kia makina kina ki uta kia mataratara ki tae ke ana te atakura he tio he huka he hauhu tihe mori ora tihe
And so it's particularly exciting for me so early in my tenure to be welcoming you to the conference of the Pacific Circle Consortium. I want to wish you a wonderful few days here in Ōtautahi and Aotearoa. I hope that, of course, you will make new friends, you'll reconnect with old friends, you'll spend time together, you'll share food, maybe a few drinks, and really reconnect and reinvigorate the work of the consortium. But what I also hope is that the consortium will continue to be a space where Pacific knowledges are celebrated, are strengthened, are connected, are distinguished from each other, and are seen as a source of rich knowledge for teaching, for research, for a contribution to society as a whole, and a place of joy at a time when sometimes the world can look very bleak. And I want to acknowledge the work of Billy and his team in bringing the conference to fruition, the student volunteers, my colleagues who've supported Billy along the way. I wish you a wonderful time. Keep in touch. Have a fabulous conference.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Aloha mai kako. And Xin Chào. I am Vietnamese in origin, born in Vietnam, raised there. My full name is pronounced Tham Trúc Thị Nguyễn, and I was named by my grandmother, and it means young bamboo that sways in the wind. Because I was born during the Vietnam War, and she wanted to be the most resilient and strong person that I could be during that very tumultuous time. So I welcome all of you here to New Zealand, to Christchurch, where I very much look forward to visiting back in 2011. And as you know, we couldn't come then because of the war. I have comments here that I will read from because I am sharing this address with John King. John King is our past chair. He was to do this opening. And so he and I very quickly put this together last night. And I don't want to skip any of his very valuable and meaningful comments. So forgive me for using technology to help me through this in sharing. So again, I am a child of a fishing village. And so I am very privileged to be able to call Hawaii home. I was raised there, have been nurtured by her lands, her waters, and have been able to grow my scholarly self, as well as my own, I would say, familial self in Hawaii. And John would also like to say that he is a child of Oregon. And he also welcomes all of you here to Christchurch, to Aotearoa, because we have been wanting to be here for a very long time. I believe, as Billy said earlier, that the oceans connect us. I come from a fishing village, and in Hawaii, I have learned all of the names of the fish because I grew up around all the fishermen. Coming from a fishing village, I was just drawn to that all the time. And I look forward to learning the names of the fish here also. I know the scientific names as well as the local colloquial names, so I look forward to learning all of that. John wishes to convey his appreciation and gratitude to Billy and the entire team that put together the conference today. He very much thanks the Community Engagement Research Lab for welcoming us in particular. His appreciation is also for all of you here in the room who invested your time, your energy, your spirit to join us in this conference as we gathered after COVID, and perhaps still during COVID. He understands that there's a lot of resources that have made it possible for all of us to be here today, not least of which is your family's support of all of you to be here today also. So he extends his gratitudes to your families as well. It is a commitment to the Pacific Circle Consortium that we are a strong and resilient community that can come together in different places throughout the years. And we thank you again to the committee here for allowing us to spend time with you. Today, I find myself in another part of the oceans that I believe connect us. And as I was walking around Christchurch, I was very struck by the cathedral. And then I read this beautiful children's book that was written, A Mouse with a New House. And it was about the cathedral mouse and what happened to that mouse when everything came down in February of 2011. And in the reading of that children's book and in the reading and watching of all the reconfigurations and the resilience of the people here, I was struck that the first thing that's on all the placards is that we want people to be safe. And that's the number one thing. Before they enter buildings, the buildings need to be safe, to take care of each other so that we all feel a safety and a wellness as a community. And I believe PCC is also a space for that safety to happen, because that safety is needed for us to share these ideas, to communicate with each other, to ask, to question, to wonder, to be curious with each other. That safe space is needed. And the PCC was previously part of OECD, the Organization for the Economic Cooperation and Development. And to be part of the OECD, your country needed to have a certain level of GDP. And if you didn't meet that level, then you were not part of the OECD. Well, the Pacific Circle countries don't have that level of GDP, which is why the Pacific Circle Consortium in its history decided to break off from OECD and become our own entity so that we could welcome all the voices and honor all of the cultural traditions of the people of the Pacific Circle. So I just want to thank everybody here, and in the revision of our bylaws and our new strategic plan as a consortium, we are moving forward in our journey also. All of our founders are now people that we honor of the past, and we are going to move forward with all of you joining us in that journey. And as we move forward, I'm reminded to continue to offer those safe spaces to all of you as we join in the learning journey as a group. So during this conference, we have been asked to share how 4 of the Sustainable Development Goals affect us in our different contexts. Those goals, again, were good health and well-being, quality education, reduced inequalities, and peace, justice, and strong institutions. How are they found here? How are they found with you? How will we share that? I look forward to hearing all of those different conversations.
My family, like I feel really clingy to. Or my best friend, I'm really, really clingy to. Kilina is, we want to encourage students to find Kilina in support networks. So finding more people that can be on their canoe or say their team, right, to support them, again, in an academic journey. Okay, so again, identifying and strengthening current support systems, engaging with the community on or off campus, and then building professional connections, okay? What is that? A whole bunch of words. Okay, so I like to use all the time. In Hawaii, we say, you know, it takes a village to raise a child, right? But I tell my students all the time, you know, it takes a village to go to college. Like seriously, like you need a lot of people to support you. And I encourage them, like, if there's one thing I want you to not feel shame about is to really find your support networks. I'm personally speaking on behalf of, I'm a Native Hawaiian myself, and I was the first one in my family to go to college. Now, I'm the youngest of 5. However, my siblings have huge age gaps. Yeah, I was a deep baby, I guess, you know? And so a lot of pressure came to me, or like excitement to go to college. Oh my God, my little sister's going, and finally we have a child in college. At the same time, as much as, you know, my parents, especially, you know, wanted to support me and was cheering me on and supported me, honestly, they didn't know how to guide me. So of course, my dad was like, yay, my daughter's going, but he would tell me, you know, tell me what I gotta pay for.
Attending classes at community college is different than secondary schools for those that come straight from high school. Some of them, a lot of our students may be non-traditional as well, so they're afraid to go back to college. They're not sure if they can succeed as a college student. They have independent choices they have to make. And then navigating deadlines, right? Different types of deadlines with instructors and moving along with what the instructor requires, you know, not really having any control over that. They also have to deal with family. As Erin mentioned, it takes a family, a village. That family and responsibilities sometimes don't work hand in hand with what they need to do for their academics. And then on the social inclusion, a lot of our first year students, or even second year, I guess now they're transitioning, where they went to high school during the pandemic, online. So returning back to campus in person, or just meeting other students, even if it's virtually, is still difficult for them. So those are things we're trying to think about when we help students, and we try to make sure they can navigate in a way that we address barriers, right? But also their successes. And then that's why we talk about balance. We want to make sure we're talking about both, because both will, in the end, help them be successful as a student. And successful to one student can mean something totally different to another student as well, so we keep that in mind. I have a picture here of a lokahi wheel. This was originally created by Kamehameha Schools. It's not something we actively use, but it is a visual model that we can use as a tool.
I am a youth development researcher, and in particular I'm really interested in how adolescents form high quality relationships with non-familial adults. It's through these interactions that we build trust and closeness and intimacy, and those are really, really important during adolescence. So disclosure is an important part of fostering those quality relationships, but it's also, you know, increasingly with concerns around mental health, we're hearing people say, you just got to ask someone for help. You just have to ask someone for help. And, you know, those requests for help are disclosures in and of themselves, and they're not always easy. So again, thinking about disclosure and those experiences of disclosure for young people is really, really important.
So thanks very much for Billy inviting me along today. I think I'm here today because I had a drink at Billy's place and ended up agreeing to do this. So I think there's mark lesson number one. So I was just going to take you through sort of my experience. So this was actually my home in January 2011. I lived there with my wife and 3 young children. It had survived the September 2010 earthquake really pretty well. And I had a small job doing a little bit of property work. This was my home on the 22nd of February 2011. My wife and son were actually trapped in the house when it came down. He was 4 years old. They spent quite a bit of time actually trapped in the house. But luckily what happened, a person was walking down the street and saw the dust rising from the house and came in and managed to barge down the front door to get them out. Little did I know on this day that my entire life would change, my career direction and everything I would be doing would change from there. As Billy has already said, I was a member of the Sumner Volunteer Fire Brigade at the time. I actually just recently retired from there after 19 years as a volunteer, averaging about 25 hours a week, so it's a pretty big volunteering role. When the earthquake actually happened, I was down at the Sumner School. We were just opening a new school hall there, and I had volunteered to manage the construction and opening of the hall. When the earthquake actually happened, you couldn't stand up, so I actually ended up lying on the ground, waiting for the shaking to finish. And when I came out of the building, I actually saw the major cliff collapse that came down. Saw it happen. It happened probably 30 seconds after the shaking stopped. And this was the Sumner Return Services Association. So this is the RSA in Sumner.
Vai vai ke aloha ka Hawaiila, he mana o he aloha e lehi ho'i, e lehi me ke aloha, e lehi ho'i, e lehi me ke aloha.
So we're both in the teacher education program at University of Hawaii at Manoa in the secondary division. So anybody who wants to become a teacher from 6th to 12th grade, Kristen is our science specialist and I do world languages and multilingualism.
So I would say 7 years ago, our faculty got together and we really wanted to re-envision our program because we were super siloed by our content area. And so we spent some time as a faculty really kind of thinking about what was important to us, and we decided on social justice. And so we just completely redesigned our program. And we're now in our 6th cohort coming through our program. And so our program, Kahalewai Ho'onauau, it's a place of learning where teacher candidates develop a sense of self, a sense of place, and cultivate culturally sustaining and revitalizing teaching practices. And Alohi's gonna, she gifted us our program name, and she's just gonna tell us really quickly about it.
Yeah, so we really thought to capture, you know, the metaphor of light and how it would give life and knowledge, and to really be a place for our students. So all of our sub-groupings, headings are all entities of light.
So I chose this also because it is a variant of the lehua. And the lehua is the flower that blooms on the volcano that arises from the fire and leads to the future. And it symbolizes for me 2 very important people who I bring to this circle now. My maternal and paternal grandmothers, who were women of valor, who were heroes, who sacrificed greatly for their family to survive. They survived Holocausts of various kinds, and they rose again from the fire. And so here's to my grandmothers. Bring them to you.
For me, it represents growth and a reminder to kuha aheo, to stand up and be proud. It's made up of so many little leaves, but together it's really tall, and if it's growing in the ground, it's all standing up nice. And you usually don't see many drooping over. They're all standing tall and proud, and so it reminds me of just my academic journey, also to be here, and those that came before me, like Olopilani, Kirsten, Kule, like so many that have just encouraged me to stand up and be proud.
Okay, so Billy, if you can stand, and we're actually all going to Oli, and we're going to pretend like we actually joined it, but we're going to present it to Gilshaw at the end. So if you guys get the words right there.
Oh. Oh. Vai vai ke aloha, Hawaii ha, he mana o he aloha e, ele i hoi, ele me ke aloha, ele i hoi, ele me ke aloha.
Who preceded us, all our presenters talked about name, and this name to us is really important, so that the kauna of it is that, so our prize gourds are made firm, and basically gourds were containers used amongst Native Hawaiians, and it was this special one, Huevaya, was about the water, and we know that Hawaii as water is a place of life, and that's why when you, is life in Hawaii, and Alohilani and various people said why, because it's significant to give life, and as we think about health of children, it's about their life. And also in this one, when the gourds, the decorated gourds are not full and they're empty, they're actually noisy. So we have to fill our gourds with all that they're supposed to be filled with. And so in this kauna, the gourds, our prize gourds, are children, and we want them to be healthy, and we want them to be filled with knowledge and all the ike, and then they become firm in their own life and practices.
All right, so we're going to talk about a very small piece of a very large project that's funded through the Native Hawaiian Education Fund within the U.S. Department of Education. And basically this slide says that this is our thoughts and not theirs, and so nothing that we're saying represents the U.S. government. But we thank them for the money.
We thank them for the money.
So, you know, there's been a lot of talk that is giving you a little bit of history of Hawaii, and I think it's important to understand that I'm going to give you a lot of statistics but they're kind of, you know, it's really important to understand that the reason that these statistics are here is because of a lot of the history that has come before us. And so it's not necessarily a desperate way of thinking, and we want to think about all of the amazing things that Native Hawaiians bring to our land and to our life. But some of the things that I'm going to talk about are some of the disparities that have occurred in Hawaii because of the history. So Native Hawaiian adults have in higher levels of inadequate health care. We look at health risk behaviors and thinking about violence, alcoholism, substance abuse, tobacco use, and unhealthy eating. all of that is more prevalent in our Native Hawaiian adults and youth. There's higher risk factors for obesity, poverty, unhealthy nutrition, anxiety, and that leads to more chronic health conditions, thinking about asthma, high cholesterol, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and depression.
I remember those early mornings, those who have done your PhD, I remember that morning about 4 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting there and I thought, what shall I write? And all of a sudden, those many days in the village growing up with my father, following him around the village, I've blown so many corn shell over the years. You know, I guess the curfew in the village at 6 o'clock at night, when you go to Samoa in the village, you will hear the corn shell plong. That means you're not allowed outside. As a period of time for families to engage with God. And the only thing that you could hear is prayers and hymns. And that's all you engage with in that period of time. And it was the corn shell that brought that particular time to a true meaningful time for the village, to ban everything else, but dedicate that half an hour for that time for God. So I was quite emotional really when I was able to put these words on paper. And then I looked back at it and I still wasn't satisfied. I think this is my 10th time of reframing and refining this piece to really echo the meaning, true meaning of what our people and our culture, represent our culture in that sense.
And all of us here at PCC, we know that. We know that context doesn't just matter, but context is everything. And so we're going to share our story today about our work across the Pacific and trying to look at the different contexts. I really appreciate the presentation before us about thinking about stakeholders and partnerships, because that is at the heart of every minute of the work that we do as well. But this is based on the social justice theoretical framework. And I'll just read the first quote, and you can maybe grab some of these others if you want them for your literature reviews. But Kumashiro describes collective policy changing as trying to reframe academia to orient the work of educational scholars like all of us more intentionally toward justice and to make a different intervention in the world. One that leverages research and our collective social positions as scholars to influence policy. And I love PCC for that very reason. This truly is a collective where we are exploring these issues. So our University of Hawaii's mission states that it is our kuleana, our responsibility to serve Hawaii and our neighbors in the Pacific. Like the same first sentence, that is our mission, and our Curriculum Studies Department also highlights collaborating with and serving the Pacific. However, when you actually try to do that, we've run into quite a few hurdles. So we want to just openly tell our story and dialogue with you about some of these hurdles. But the headline is from Dr. Hilda Heine, the former president of the Republic of Marshall Islands, the first woman president. She teaches in our program now. She teaches a course called Leadership and Climate Change. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that and share some nuggets from her class with you tomorrow in our presentation. But she says, the common practice of judging Pacific Island students using Western standards, it's not practical, realistic, or even desirable. We don't even want it in the Pacific. So that pushes us to a whole new agenda of recreating, making truly reciprocal partnerships, and listening and serving their needs. What do they desire? So our objectives today is to begin with a quick background context, the pond, telling the context is everything. about our Pac-Med program. Real quickly, we also want to just ground ourselves in positionality in the leadership work that we do. And then we want to discuss, the main part of this will be an actual discussion with you about some of these challenges and hurdles that we've experienced in trying to fulfill this mission of serving our neighbors in the Pacific. So that's going to be our overview for today. But just regarding positionality, you know how in emails and things now we're all seeing gender pronouns? She, hers, he, his. I really wish we would start a trend where we would also be able to put our cultural identity. I wish we'd be able to say what we identify with culturally. And so for me and my story, I was taught by one of our elders, Pu'alei Burgess in Hawaii, to do a quick name story before we present, so we are grounded in positionality. So I'm Dr. Deborah K. Zerker. Doctor is a title I worked really hard to earn when I was the first woman principal of a middle school, 60 years of male-only faculty. So that connection to the university was my lifeline to survive that position. Deborah, my Mennonite mother, had to give me a biblical name. So she chose the word Deborah, and from the Bible that meant a judge or somebody who fights for social justice. But then she intentionally misspelled my middle name K, K-A-E, because she didn't want me to conform. She wanted me to learn and fight. And Zerker, my last name, Zerker is from Zurich, Switzerland. So my ancestors fled during the Reformation. They had their tongues cut out, they were burned at the stake, and they took all of our land because we stood up to the Pope, used the Bible and stood up to the Pope. So I am ethnically Mennonite and Amish that migrated from Switzerland. So I strongly, strongly identify with the decolonization movements and with the loss of land and the loss of rights and voice. And that's been my passion. So if I was able to say my cultural identity, it would be Oceania, Pacifica, Mennonite, and even Canadian, where my children were born and my daughter and granddaughter are now. So I've been doing this work for 19 years now, approaching 19 years across the Pacific. So that's my positionality, and when we pass off, my colleagues will also just ground themselves in their place, sense of place and sense of purpose.
We come from a very small village where everyone actually has the same last name. It's called Summington Benevolent Association, or Summington Village, and we actually have a little association in Hawaii where I was born and raised. I went to public school all my life, and so my classmates were immigrants, Pacific Islanders, and so I love my home and I love the work that I do because it reminds me of my home and all the islands. So I'm gonna go really quickly through this, but most of it's gonna be pictures of our amazing candidates. We want you to see their beautiful faces and feel their heart. They are the spirit of this program and why we do what we do. So as Dr. Deb had said, a 50-year partnership is one of the longest transnational partnerships between a university and a Department of Education.
And so I was hired as one of the sort of place-based lecturers for a curriculum leadership class. And then I was able to come on full-time with the university while still living in the Federated States of Micronesia, and then I've recently transitioned back to Hawaii. But previous to that, I lived in the Marshall Islands over the course of about 9 years. And so it's really been an honor to get to sort of bridge these two worlds, because I've been living in Hawaii for about 12 years, kind of in the middle of these, between living in the Marshall Islands and living in the Federated States of Micronesia. And so it's been a really wonderful opportunity to get to take what I learned from working with Hawaiian-focused charter schools, what I learned in the Marshall Islands and what I've learned in the Federated States of Micronesia, and sort of to mix it all together into this really great program. And so it's been really exciting. And so one of the areas that I've been working in is really on our research focus. And so I love that the keynote speaker this morning was talking about developing this Samoa-based Indigenous research method, because that's you probably saw me taking all these photos because I thought, oh, we got to incorporate that into our classes next semester, because that's really what we're trying to do. So the students in our program, or candidates in our program, take 2 different research classes, and we try to sort of tie them together. So they look at one problem of practice, again, an issue in their island, not something that we come up with in Hawaii that we say, oh, that's your problem, let's address it. We go to their educational leaders. Ivy and I met with them all across the islands this summer, and we asked the question, what do you want us to research? What are the issues that you're facing that you want some help with? And so they sort of gave us these ideas, and we have this 2-semester sort of back-to-back research classes where we use Indigenous research methods, and we look at a problem of practice in their own place. And then hopefully, the research that the candidates are doing on those issues will come up with some real solutions for them that they can then apply to make education stronger, more resilient. So some examples of topics they've had in the Marshalls and in American Samoa, they looked at what were teacher perspectives around the COVID pandemic and how that affected education. So that the next time there's a disaster or, God forbid, another pandemic, the departments of education there will have input on how did it affect teachers? What was it like when they closed schools? Did teachers have the resources they needed? What about the social emotional impact of that? And how did that impact the way they interacted with their students, right? Those kinds of questions. Right now, we're looking at accreditation in Koshirai, which is pretty exciting. We're looking also at indigenizing education in Pohnpei in the class there. And so we look at these issues and we're using Indigenous research methods. So we read, Smith, of course, who's from, right here down the road, I guess. We read through Violetti, we read through some of these kind of, kings and queens of the Indigenous research world around the Pacific. And so it's a really great opportunity for our candidates who are, for the most part, living in the North Pacific to also learn about what's going on in the South Pacific. Because so much of the great scholarship around Indigenous research methods has come from the South. And so that's another neat way to kind of connect and say, we can look South. We don't have to look toward the US for what legitimate research is, right? So we've been doing that, and there is this kind of question that comes sometimes, say, well, is it rigorous? Is what they're doing real research? Is it meeting, the University of Hawaii sort of expectations around quality? And of course, we unapologetically say, absolutely it is. Absolutely it is.
But I'd actually liked school and realised that one of the reasons there's that mum and dad, both of them, had to leave school after primary school, so when they were 11 or 12. And for them, getting us kids, and there's part of us, an education was really, really important. So I think somehow that rubbed off. So I knew it was a privilege, but what I didn't like about any school stuff was that conformity, obedience, discipline stuff, which I'm just not good about. And I think it's a complete waste of time. And I also think it's counterproductive. So I went to school, did that, got to university, all those sorts of things. Went off actually and was later got appointed to the Local Government Commission to reorganise local government, which meant going away from home a lot. So I actually came back to Canterbury University and asked them, could I do my PhD in this? Because I thought this might be really interesting, because not many people who get to reorganise local government get to do their PhD on it. And they said, no, you can't, because while you're on the Local Government Commission, you're gainfully employed, and you can't do a PhD while you're gainfully employed. So this is a while ago, and I hope my colour changed. But I did have a good argument about them about how being on the Local Government Commission was not in any way gainful employment whatsoever, but they weren't buying that at all. So, no PhD until the nice people at Lincoln decided they'd give me one, which is way easier. Easier. So later, I had 2 sons. The older son went off to primary school, a local primary school just down the road. And having liked school, I thought that would be real simple. He hated it. He thought it was boring, dull, the teacher was horrible, which was kind of true actually, and all sorts of things. So he would deliberately get kicked out of the classroom, and I said, so why do you want to just sit out there? He said, because I just want to think about the meaning of life. And she just wants me to do that silly cursive writing. And there's no point in that because there's a computer at home and nobody's going to do that writing in the future, which turned out to be true. So we looked at, I certainly didn't want to homeschool him because he was way too stroppy. So this was Elmwood School, a local school here in Christchurch. And so we created a group within the school so that those kids who didn't love school the way it was could learn around the things that excited them. So they didn't have to read this book because they were bored with that book. They could read a book about whatever. They could learn their stuff by skateboarding or however they wanted to. So we thought we would set that up within the school and extend it to other schools who might need it. So went and raised the money for the teacher because we wanted to retain their curiosity rather than lose it. And we wanted their learning to be fun. So the kids could take a break whenever they needed it. And I have to say what I learned from that was how amazing the stuff inside kids' heads is. Like the things they thought about and the things they wondered about were just incredible. Like really fun things. But there was one group of boys, of which my son was part, who decided that they would start a shop within the school. So they went off to the crappy $2 shop and bought a pile of junk and saw what sold and what didn't, and like learned how to market the things and what the people wanted, and learned about marketing, profits, all those sorts of things, and did very well. And they were allowed to keep the money, so it was a real lesson. Then the other teachers in the school complained that they were allowed to keep the money because that was just terrible. Like they were making a profit, and I thought it was funny, but they didn't. And it made me realise that some people actually like bells and uniforms and restrictions within schools, and it might actually be hard to change those schools from within. The other thing that was cool about it is that because the kids were doing stuff around what they were excited about, their excitement sort of contaminated the others. So they sort of caught on to their excitement, and even though they knew nothing about it, they wanted to experiment with it and learn about it, and they were telling about it and they were really excited to tell about it. So we realised, excuse me, that there wasn't really a teacher and learners. There was a whole lot of learners and teachers within the group. So we got rid of those terms, teacher, learner, all those sorts of things.
In early 1960s, that Korea had almost nothing. So we were after the 36 years of Japanese colony, and then World War II, and then Korean War. So the whole country was devastated, and there was almost nothing to play with as a child. So my playground was the hills and sands and mud and railroad tracks, and I know it's a very dangerous story, but I was running a lot with my older neighborhood kids, and railroad tracks, we were listening to the railroad, and then they go, whenever the train is approaching us, we're gonna run as fast as we can. So we didn't tell our parents about that. We had so much thrill, but it was like that kind of play, and we were very poor. So I'm the fifth of 5 children in our family, and I think yesterday maybe Erin said that if you're the 5th, then you're maybe Pope's child. And when I was young, I thought that I was the best person ever, and I was most important to be born. And that's why my older two brothers and sisters, they had to be there because I was coming, right? So I was kind of trying to win over my big old brothers, and I was very kind of feisty, and I had a strong will to, because you have to be really nimble and fast to get the last piece on the table. So if we have a bowl of rice at night, that it was a blessing. So with all those kind of very deep memories, and also it doesn't matter as long as you are with a family, caring family and siblings and the surrounding neighborhood that care for children. The having lots of stuff or toys didn't matter. We were just happy. And one of the evenings, my brother and we made a boat out of our blanket, and then the fort with our blanket too, and then we were rowing the boat to go somewhere for many days, and then we hit the alligators or we hit dragons, and we're just making all the kind of imagination to make the best out of the situation. And we had a rice bowl that was kind of at the bottom of the rice cooker that was round, and that was our great meal for the whole several days of sailing trip. So that was our cookies, and so that was only available for us.
But they were doing beach cleanup because it affected their community. They loved that environmental science class. Like every day we were outside doing things, we were in the ocean, we were doing really great hands-on stuff that they could see the value of immediately, right? Then the next part of the sort of framework was how. How did they learn? And I would say, oh, how did they teach you? Your auntie taught you when you were 7? Okay, how did she teach you? What did that look like? And I would say, if you weren't sure, how did you get help? If you didn't know what came next, or you were confused, how did you get clarity, right? So I was trying to figure out what kind of teaching methods were they using for like the first time that they taught it, and then if it didn't quite go well, how did they reteach it, right? How did they assess it? How did they know if he or she got it correctly? I also, while it was unplanned, it turned out that I had half males and half females, so I was able to kind of control for gender as well, which was neat, unexpected. So Giolina said she kind of learned through scaffolding, or through what Ni'i Howans would say is tena. I believe Hawaiians would maybe say kena, where you learn something small and you keep building on it until you get more and more complex skills of the same thing. She said the first thing I learned to cook was mea-quenchin, that's roasted breadfruit. She says, first we make a fire. I already knew how to make a fire. It's really easy. Then I just threw the breadfruit on the fire. You literally don't prepare it. You take it from the tree, you throw it on the fire. When it gets black, then you just scrape it, and the black part comes off, and you eat it. Pretty simple, right? She already knew how to make the fire. She just had to throw it on there. Miriam, who is a seamstress, a fashion designer, amazing, muumuus, like really amazing dresses. She says, one day, I decided, okay, I'm gonna make a panty for her, my younger sister. So I made a panty out of just, you know, before we used to have a bag of rice, the bags were like fabric. So that's what I used for the panty. So I got the elastic and I made that panty and I put it on her and it fit her. So I said, okay, now I can make a dress. So I made a dress. She had it. It fits her. She was 2 years old or 3 years old. One day I said, maybe I could do one for me. So I made one for myself. I was maybe 13 years old. So she started simple, taking the cloth rice bag, making the little panties for her sister. That worked, and then she learned to make the dress, little kid dress, and then one for herself. And they also talked about demonstration and observation, right? The teacher demonstrating and the students just watching. Hands behind their back, watching.
As we take our premise from the ideas of the OECD that 1, disciplinary knowledge or subject-specific knowledge continues to be a an essential foundation for understanding, and a structure through which students can develop other types of knowledge. And secondly, the opportunity to acquire disciplinary knowledge is fundamental to equity. The petition was called Give Me My History and was presented to the New Zealand government by the New Zealand History Teachers Association. And what were they asking for? For history to be taught as a compulsory subject in New Zealand schools. Why? Because every New Zealand child should know New Zealand history.
Yeah, so it's a sustainable practice. This is, and my uncle reminded me, it's not like the fishing nets where the fish can't get out. They can still escape, they can jump out, they can swim through the coconut fronds, and people only take what they need when they're in that circle. He said, remember back then, Emma, there was no refrigerator. You just take what you need, share it, leave the rest. So I hope that also shows how TEK sustainability can help us in what we're doing. So,
Makara's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Advisory Committee felt that it was very important that students know something about the past in their local area. Not just all the big national events and the histories, particularly of the southern states, but to know something about their local area.
And what we were funded to do was to think about a cultural strength-based approach to talking about climate. But one of the reasons that I am particularly interested in this is I also, as Billy said, serve or have for the last 8 years on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I was a lead for the 1.5 report and for the Cities and Infrastructure report, and on their core writing team. And so we keep putting out these reports and keep talking about how bad it is. And my colleagues in the Small Islands chapter, we're not saving the world one citation at a time. We feel like we're just bearing witness at the moment. But all in our own work, there's a lot of thinking about how can we make a difference. And in particular, given that we know that the world's temperatures have already warmed actually probably about 1.2 degrees by now, and we're moving into a 1.5 degree warmer world compared to what it was back in the 1850s, 1880s when we started using a lot of fossil fuels. What does this actually mean? And as you all know, it's taken the IPCC a long time to catch up. What this means for actually people embedded in culture and community is huge. So, believe it or not, this is the first time I think that people have ever featured in an IPCC main graph. I think there's been some little icons, but there are people finally, but the battle we had to get these babies in was quietly off the record, quite something. So what we just wanted to explain was that children that are born in 2020 will experience in their lifetime 4 times the rate of extreme weather events that I will experience. And that's ever, that I will experience even if I manage to get to 80. And that is an incredible thing to think.
So, my name is Brooke, and I'm originally from Colorado, and now I live in Oahu. And my role there is at the elementary education program at the College of Education in the multilingual learning space.
I'm an assistant professor in School for Teacher Education Secondary, and I work with world language candidates, so if they want to teach whatever language, and also with the multilingual learners.
So our purpose in this project is we are wanting to showcase the voices of Chuukese and Marshallese students and families who reside in Hawaii. And then also we wanted to bring the voices of the teachers and their perspectives. So I really appreciate the last presentation, in some ways bear witness to and create space. So this is from one of our colleagues, Jeremiah Brown. He works at Waipahu High School. He's an English learner specialist. And he we felt this quote was really important to situate the work we wanted to share with you today. So he said, they're our kids, they live in our community, they go to school with our kids, our nephews and nieces, they're our kids. So whatever you would want for your son, daughter, niece, nephew, you know, however you'd want them to be treated in school, it applies to the kids from the Marshall Islands in Chilton. They're our kids. So from that space and idea, we wanted to share why we're doing this work, our partnership with the community, that's essential. And then we had 2 projects that we wanted to share with you, and we'll finish with conclusions and party remarks. So starting with the why, we're situated in a couple frameworks. Roland Tharp and Ronald Gallimore did work with the Commitment Early Education Project and the notion of contextualization. So that's that idea of bringing what the students know from their home, community, families to the classroom. So that's framing a lot of what we're doing. And then also culture-based education. So yeah, a big piece, what we'll start with is in Hawaii, there are significant inequities for our Chukis and Marshallese students. And again, we wanted to bear witness to what's happening. And for us, we wanted to focus on what is our role and our position, and a huge piece is preparing teacher candidates. And so what we found is that we need more materials and resources for our instructors and our teacher candidates.
Of course, before we begin, we just want to, again, from the University of Hawaii, acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land on which we meet today. We pay our respects to ancestors and elders past and present. As a Pacific university, we respect Ngāiwi Maori as the Tāngata Whenua of Aotearoa, and that they are committed to upholding the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi, fostering relationships with Maori, supporting Maori fellows and trainees, and striving to improve the health of Maori. We wanted to start our session with you thinking about your identity, which I know we've done a lot during this conference, but this might be a little bit different way. So we won't have time for you to fill in the whole thing, but we wanted to give you about 3 minutes just to start filling that out. So go ahead, take a few minutes with that.
Sister of ice and snow, I'm coming to you from the land of my ancestors, from atolls, sunken volcanoes, undersea descent of sleeping giants.
There's a whole bunch of different clubs from anywhere from sports, social, academic clubs, but we fit into a mixture of social and community clubs. We're one of the biggest clubs on campus with thousands of members every year, which is pretty awesome. And we do volunteering events. It's pretty simple. We have a range of different events, anywhere from 20 people doing a smaller beach cleanup to having 800 people in one location helping out the community in whatever way we can. We've really started. Change this. So this is where we're at the moment. This is a lovely photo from Camp Kaikoura, which is up the coast, at the east coast from Christchurch. But there's a long story about how we got to where we are now. So on the 4th of September 2010, we had the first of 2 major earthquakes in Christchurch. There was widespread damage throughout Christchurch as a result of this first earthquake. And a student, or 2 students, Sam Johnson and Jason Promilton, thought, well, how can we help? How can we take this disaster and mobilize students to make our community, or help our community? So as a result, they created this Facebook page called the Student Base for Earthquake Cleanup, which is quite the mouthful, which aimed to assist with non-threatening life, or tasks rather. We had about 2,500 volunteers, which in of itself is really special, and cleaned up 65,000 tons of silt. And so this was the initial first formation of the SVA, and really was the first of many great things. But unfortunately, on the 22nd of February 2011, we had the second of our big earthquakes. This was a lot more major than the first earthquake. There was severe, major infrastructure damage, and also 185 fatalities. So as a result, again, students, Sam Johnson and Jason Prumpton, thought, well, how can we help? We've got all these students who the university was cancelled for the few weeks after the earthquakes to give people time to recover their lives, essentially. How can we mobilize this massive body of students to do good in the community? And so as a result, they sent 14,000 volunteers out across Christchurch with shovels, spades, and wheelbarrows clearing up liquefaction and silt from the resulting earthquakes. And they did pretty well, a pretty good job. 360,000 tons of silt and 75,000 volunteer hours. This was the defining moment of SVA, where there was a lot of coverage, a lot of attention, where people really saw the power of students and the power of community coming together after a disaster. And of course, everyone wants to know, why did it work? You know, there's disasters around the world almost every day. What made the Christchurch response different? There's a couple of different things that we can obviously conjecture that made it different. But the main thing was the combination of the students' desire to want to make a difference. They could see their friends down the road whose gardens had been buried in a meter of mud. They could see the damage that it was doing to both people's quality of life and also just their ability to function. But it was also, it was simple work. Everyone can pick up a shovel and clean up silt, or can at least give out food and water for volunteers. What people needed was the framework. They needed someone to tell them, oh, you need to go over here and you need to clean up the silt over here. And once you've done that, then you can go over here and help out this person instead. And so once this framework was provided, it was very easy to expand and have thousands of people working out in Christchurch to help clean up the city. And most of all, it was just good work. The students really loved it because it was a useful, impactful way to use their time. And the community loved it because it was doing real impactful work in the community. Fast forwarding a few years, a lot happened in 2011 to 2017, I promise you. We're going to have to skip forward a wee bit. In 2017, the first of our now regular events was started, called the Big Give. So the Big Give is our flagship event, where we have around 800 people throughout Christchurch. 800 students go to one location in Christchurch and try to have an entire morning, so 3 hours of impactful work. And this can lead to literally thousands of volunteer hours done in just one morning, which is pretty special. I'll talk more about this later, but it really was a way to move past just pure disaster response and have regular events to engage volunteers in volunteering in their community. And then you'll see throughout these next couple of slides the theme of disaster response. So SVA was born out of disaster response, and this is something which we continue to develop and maintain because it's so important in terms of meeting the needs of the community. So in 2019, on March 15th, I guess a bit of backstory, on March 15th, we had New Zealand's first terrorist attack here in Christchurch, where a shooter went to a mosque near Hagley Park and basically went on a rampage. And it was very shocking to the whole country that something like this could happen. And again, I guess from the SVA's point of view, we thought, well, how can we help? There's no way that we can stop these disasters from happening because they're just so out of our control from a student's point of view. But how can we help the people who have been so traumatized by this event? And so we decided to provide transport systems using the vans that some of you have seen during the conference. To help anyone who's feeling unsafe, who didn't want to be by themselves, or to help provide transport services to funerals and other family events. And then 2020, as I'm sure you all know, 2020 was our first of a couple of COVID years. And again, we thought, well, generally our events in the past have been bringing people together in one location with literally thousands of people in one space. But with COVID, suddenly we couldn't do this. A lot of people were isolated. They couldn't leave their homes, they couldn't see their friends, they couldn't even do simple things like shopping.
So before going to the background of my presentation, let me tell you what Pashiachi means. So Pashiachi is a Bengali word, which means beside you or be with you. Okay. So from where this Pashiachi actually came from. So this is an interesting story. So some of you might remember the 2017 influx. Rohingya refugee influx, when over 1 million Rohingya ethnic Muslims, they fled their homeland, Myanmar, and are currently living in a crowded settlement in the southeastern part of Bangladesh. So these are some of the photographs that you can see. So they came by oceans, they came by also land. And you can also see that, some of the refugees are like waiting with the ration card for their relief. And yeah, and you can see that this is the border. As you can see, it has also covered a lot of national, international sensation during that time in 2017. So in the land, we have a land border of 217 kilometers with Myanmar. So these people actually, these are Rohingya minorities. They cross these straits. It's a Naf River, we call it. So they also cross this border, and right now they are living in these camp-like spaces, makeshift camps. Okay. So, and still in 2017, the number was 700,000, but right now their population increased, and over 1 million now living in a very crowded settlements. So, the initial experience of Rohingya refugees was a bit chaotic, because that people get sentimental because of this religious affiliation or something like that, because they're Muslims, the Bengalis are mostly Muslims. So they actually went there, the people of Bangladesh, they actually went there to support them, like in terms of foods, in terms of clothes. So as you can see that people are scrambling for foods and other items. But also disappointment. Why disappointment? So we also provided them clothes, but later one day we found that they all threw it away. So that actually tells about contextualization, because they have their own language, their own culture, their own identity, and their clothing pattern is also different. So since we didn't consider that that practice, that customs, so whatever clothes we have given them, they threw it away. Yeah. So that actually draws that contextualization issues, into research. So these are some of the photographs that's been drawn by the Rohingya children, and you see that they went how much traumatic they were during that time. So because all the photographs that you see there, it tells the persecution, it tells about the war that they went on, and yeah.
We would like to introduce ourselves. We are from, many of you know, we're from Oregon. So we'll begin with Eileen.
My name is Eileen Mickey Johnson, and I have been in the field for a very long time, almost 50 years. Starting as a practitioner, following my master's degree, and working in a tribal Head Start program in northern Idaho in the U.S., and then later in our current area, Southern Oregon, I worked in a full-day early learning child care program at Southern Oregon University for a number of years, and then I moved to the community college, rural community college, when there was a need to develop a program in early childhood education. So I have been there ever since. And Becky and I have worked together for many, many years.
24 years now.
We just figured that out last night.
Oh, all right. So I'm Kayla Rapay. I think you have become a little familiar with me from yesterday's presentation, but I work at Southern Oregon University. I moved up there as an undergrad, fell in love with the town, and just never left. So I've been there now for about 15 years, I think, and I've been working at SOU as a navigator for our early childhood development program for about 10 years now, and have equally fallen in love with the field. And as I think you'll hear today, I'm inspired by both of these women, and I think we are all inspired by the early childhood, early learning professionals in our field, and we draw from them, and they are what keep us going. And that's why we're here today, to share a little bit about the work we do.
And I am a professor in the School of Education, and it's been about 24 years. I came to SOU following after my predecessor, Mary Curtis Gramley, who now has passed, and her legacy lives in us to continue the good work that she started earlier. And these two ladies are my inspiration, and I am so grateful that I get to work with them and also many other amazing early childhood teachers around the area for so many years now, so about 24 years. So it's an honor to be here, truly. I think Sapphire provided a wonderful foundation for us to continue of our passion, our love of early childhood, love of the children and the families coming together. And we would like to
provide a little context and have you do some thinking a little bit. But we wanted to talk about, we work with early childhood professionals in the community, and in Oregon, people don't need a degree to work in the field of early childhood. So what we are trying to do is change that a bit, and I think that's starting to happen. But just to let you know, we're working with people who are working in the field who don't have a degree, for the most part. Many of them do, but most of them, the majority probably don't.
We were very curious coming to New Zealand. It's like it just didn't know how long it would take, and just the plane ride was 12 hours, and everything else just kind of added. And then we're also wondering about, I wonder how big New Zealand is like. So we kind of compared it. It's like, I think Billy mentioned that Oregon, New Zealand, in many ways kind of similar. If we put together the South and North islands, then it's about the same size or a little bit bigger of Oregon. And then the population is about 1 million more. So a little bit of kind of expanded of Oregon. And in some ways, Oregon is considered a little bit rural. We're not like in metropolitan areas, and but a lot of the areas that we face the Pacific Ocean, so we share the ocean too. We're connected that way, and we serve a lot of students. Our students are coming from rural areas.
We developed our consortium, which is a partnership between Southern Oregon University, my community college, Rowe Community College, as well as Umpqua, Clement, and Southwestern Oregon Community Colleges. And you can see the stars are where those are located. We serve 7 counties in Oregon, which is about 20% of Oregon. So it's quite a large area distance between places. And then we also partner with, in our each of these regions, with our Child Care Resource and Referral Agency. So there's 5 higher ed institutions and then 3 different Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies that we work closely with.
So there is our acknowledgement of country, and this painting on there was donated to the university, and it's called Always Was, Always Will Be. And that's actually trees and carvings of trees, and trees are something that is both spiritual and practical. So they're very, very important to the Aboriginal people. And you can see there's images of diamonds in that painting. You can see the diamond shape, which is a shape, a word we don't use in mathematics very much, but that's another whole presentation. The diamond is actually representative of the Southern Cross, a star. Yeah, so can you see that? We often see the Southern Cross tattooed on Australians' arms. Well, this was on the painting instead. So, we've done a bit about me. there's two components to this. There's the Nauru Teacher Education Project and there's the New Colombo Plan. So the Nauru Teacher Education Project started at the end of 2013. So this was after the whole maths curriculum bazaar that went on for 2011, 12 and into 13. And we started an internationally recognised teacher education program in Nauru. Now Nauru is in the Central Pacific. It is extremely remote. It is very small and it has a population of about 11,000 people. So you can imagine what it was like taking a university there. The internet at the time was hardly in existence. Most of the students had no electricity, anything like that. Some of them still don't. But we've had cohorts going through a 2-year associate degree since the end of 2013. Some have gone on and added another 2 years. They've got their bachelor. So if they do 2, they get their associate degree in teaching Pacific focus in early childhood, primary or secondary. Do another 2 years, and they do this while they're teaching full time, they get their Bachelor of Ed. But you can imagine 2 years equivalent study can take 4 to 6 years when you're doing it this way. But hats off to the ones that have it. It's absolutely remarkable. And some have started their master's degree, all online. They are mixed in with all our other students. There are approximately 1/3 of the units that is created specifically for them, but the rest of the units, they are in with the whole crew. Now that, to me, contextualises, acknowledges where students are at, but it also affirms the standard that they are getting. And they like that, because they're up there and they really feel a part of the group that they're in, and they're mixed in with everybody else. So that's the teacher education project, and that's some of the students that we have at the moment, and that's at one of our national parks near where I live. Great place. Don't forget the regions when you come to Australia. Don't just go to the cities. Now, the other component of what I'm talking about today is the New Colombo Plan. Now, listen up, because there are opportunities here. The Australian federal government has a program where they support initiatives for an Australian university to link up with any education type thing that's in my field in Asia Pacific. And they pay the students $3,000 towards their flights and their accommodation, etc. Anything else they have to pay for themselves. But the Australian institution has to be able to demonstrate a link to the other country, so there needs to be a lot of discussion about the program. So what I'm talking about today is a group of students that I took to Nauru, a group of students that I took to Tuvalu under the auspices of the New Colombo Plan, and then the reverse of that, a group of Nauruan students who came to Amino. Now, in the work I do, to make it more meaningful, I don't like just doing study tours. Most people take the New Colombo Plan and they organise a holiday for the students. It might go for 2 weeks and they pop in and look at a school and, look at this, but they actually don't learn that much about the community. So what I like to do is, you want to go to Nauru, you want to go to Tuvalu, you're going to do your whole 4-week placement there that's part of your degree program. And then it's the same for the Nauruan students coming to Australia. So think about that. Both groups swapping places, not at the same time, and doing their 4-week placement. Happen to get up every day very early, go to the school all day and teach.
So because being a science graduate and being in the industry before I joined as a lecturer, so that is the struggle we had. But we have been studying in the university how we match it in the real world. Being a graduate, like a fresh graduate, so that is where the gap comes. And sometimes I didn't experience that in my university education, when the lecturers were saying, like, HR is like this and this is like this, but when you go and say it in the real business world, it's a little bit different, so it's not the same. So I just wanted to give them like writing a report, because like the management doesn't want the lengthier reports. They just want it summarized, short and sweet, the numbers. So that is how I was just trying to implement it. I didn't knew the names of this, like no idea of education, just because of my experience. And then I started like exploring it when I was looking for PhDs, and I was like, because during the COVID and all these economic situations in the country, we had an issue like high unemployment rates, and none of our graduates want to like start their own thing, and we come and complain about this and that. So we came up like, why do they want to start something for themselves, like being entrepreneurs? And I realized that like I had the struggle when I was going into management education. I didn't understand the concepts at all. Like when someone says busting, I was like, what is that? Because I knew chemistry, I knew science, I knew physics, and that is me. But those concepts are different. And like when I was doing my masters, I had my colleagues coming and asking like, hey, what is this? What do you mean by this? Because in masters we were taught all these management subjects, but someone who's coming from another background doesn't understand the things as we do. So that is where it all started. And my PhD studies about how New Zealand teaches agriculture for graduates, especially about entrepreneurship and sustainable entrepreneurship, and how Sri Lanka do it, and where we can learn from each other countries. Like, that is where it's going. These are my questions to see how this happens in Sri Lanka and how that happens in New Zealand, and how we can incorporate sustainability, entrepreneurship education, and all these things to bring it to practice with the undergraduates. So that is the key areas of my study. It's about entrepreneurship, agriculture education, experiential education. That is where in simple terms we say learn by doing. You basically do that in class, and then that we try to take it into the business world. So that is where Billy and I connect, because we believe in the same things. And then education for sustainable development.
Break down before the challenges, dilemmas that they face in schools with regards to disciplining the behavior of the students. They can go back into that model and how we live in a structured society where there's, established status and positions. There's social relationships whereby it's enforcing the roles or traditions and traditional institutions, and therefore those networks can be of support to the teachers, and can give them persistence and resilience, so they can be able to cope with all the challenges and be able to continue the work as navigators in the oceans and currents of changes that they face in education. We try to use models and strategies or pedagogies from other contexts, thinking that they will work. But we know that there is strength in understanding our own context and our own culture, because we know that, and especially when we're thinking of how, for example, teaching the Samoan students, of course, requires these restorative cultural approaches, which are inclusive, which are quite appropriate, and which are meaningful, so that it will help with the management of behavior in the classrooms. Balancing culture and policies in a changing world. Yes, it also requires a lot of understanding of our culture, our ability to be able to balance culture and Western understanding, philosophies and policies, knowing that the world that we're living in is forever changing, and so we need to keep abreast with the changes, of course. What is right, what is appropriate, because we cannot be too conservative also with the strategies. So the Matamatani model, as for teachers' experiences, not only it has contextualized teachers' stories and experiences, but it also helps at the same time build resilience for teachers. And so that's the end of my presentation. Going back to the theme of this conference, I guess it is a strong message also for all of us, maybe to reflect on our own journeys and our own cultural environment and how we are handling these challenge in the schools or in the environments, education environments that we're working in, so that perhaps this can, of course, apply. You could perhaps apply your understanding to your context, and it is, of course, a gentle reminder in family that this, together with your pedagogical knowledge, helps teachers be able to be resilient, in today's world. Thank you very much, Namihi.